Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Caring Conversations. I am Natasha Ewing Johnson, and I serve as the host of this phenomenal podcast where we are giving hope, help, and healing to caregivers. So today I have with me Lisa King de Jesus, I can say that right. And she is a home care provider here in the Metro Atlanta area, because I know I have people watching from all over the country and maybe all over the world. I don't know where you are. But I wanted to give you guys an opportunity just for us to step into another discussion about, and as it relates to caregiving. So we're going to give Lisa an opportunity to introduce herself, who she is, what she does, and a little bit about her company before we dive in. Lisa, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Natasha. It is an honor to be here speaking with you today about such an important topic. So thank you again for tapping me for this. There are so many home care companies out there and so many people you could be speaking with. So I definitely thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your company. What do you do and what do you provide?
So I tell people all the time, there's this quote from former First Lady Rosalind Carter. There are 4 types of people in this world: those who used to be caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be a caregiver, and those who will need caregiving at some point in their lives. And so I fell in one of those categories. I became a caregiver. I was living in New York at the time, New York State, actually, Albany specifically. And my father was living in Buffalo, which is where I'm from, born and raised. He got sick. And I was trying to manage his caregiving from afar. It's 4-hour distance between Albany, New York and Buffalo, New York. I would go back and forth every other weekend to see about him. At the time, he had a niece living with him. She just happened to be living there temporarily while he got sick. So she naturally just became the person in the house who was kind of taking care of his needs. I was still going back and forth visiting with him, and his care progressed. His condition got progressively worse. She was no longer in a house, and I found myself packing up everything, leaving, and moving in with him. At the time, I was working, and so I took FMLA, which that's what it's for. It's family leave. It's for, when you need to take care of your family, you can use this time. And I moved in with him and became his caregiver. I was the healthcare proxy, the power of attorney, the person on the ground, making sure that he was okay. Now, his condition, like I said, got progressively worse to the point where he needed 24-hour care. And I had to fight for that. He was getting denied. I had to write appeals, and it took so long. And he finally got the 24-hour care that he needed. So I was working with a company that provided the aides, that provided the nurses to come in. And so he had aides to come in. He had nurses that came in 2 or 3 times a week to see about him. But I still had to oversee that process. So I learned so much so quickly. I learned how to do a nurse's job. I learned how to do an aide's job.
All of it, right?
But what I saw in this process was the lack of compassion these aides had.
Wow.
It was really scary, to be honest with you. And I was there in the home. Imagine if I wasn't there in the home. And so I saw things that I said, this could be better. And long story short, when my father did pass, I tell you how God ordains everything, because nothing happens by chance. You get so many weeks with FMLA. By the time he passed, my FMLA had run out.
Wow.
Like almost to the date. Like it was so ordained by God. I was there at the time that I needed to be there, doing what I needed to do for my father. And so after he passed, I moved back down here to Georgia. I'd lived here before, so I was moving back to Georgia and still kind of grieving, but I needed to find that next something for me to do. I knew I didn't want to work another 9 to 5. And I was talking with a friend who has a personal care service, and that is kind of what led me in this direction. And after seeing what I went through with my father, after taking care of him, after learning more than I thought I would ever learn about the care business, I felt that it was the right fit. I have a degree in communications, so it's something that's totally different. Yes, public communications. My entire 30 plus year career has been in communications in some fashion, including in healthcare. I've worked in government, I've worked in politics, I've worked in IT, but it's all been in the communication realm. But I said, I'm going to do this. So in 2022, the same year my father passed, I was opening up an LLC. And that's where King Home Care LLC came into play.
That is amazing. You said something key right there that, there was such a lack of compassion. And one of the reasons I opted to for me in my journey, I opted to hire, private care individuals to come in, and I created infrastructure around managing everything from their pay to their schedule. And I'm very techie. So I had an app and all this stuff. They would clock in and very, very techie from that perspective. So the lack of compassion, which is very, very scary for most caregivers out there. That's why you have so many people opting to take personal care of their loved one in the home. What gap really did you see beyond the lack of compassion that you see in the industry that you feel like your company meets in terms of filling that gap? What are you doing differently to help caregivers feel confident that when you send someone out to them, that they are getting someone that's quality, etc., that can truly meet? And I love the passion that you bring, because you're coming from a place of experience, right? You can identify with those caregivers, and that's critical, because some people are just in this for a paycheck, but they've never really experienced like having to go through the appeal process to try and help get payment to supplement payment for a caregiver. Those are all difficult roads to navigate. So what is your company doing differently to help fill that gap?
Absolutely. Well, I tell people that what makes King Home Care different is empathy. We know where the family is mentally, physically. We understand what the family is going through. I built the company on 3 main principles: providing compassion, integrity, and excellence, because that is where I saw was lacking in my father's care. And when I say compassion, I had people who would come in past his door where he was laying in his bed, because he was an invalid at that point, and go straight into the living room. They didn't go in, they didn't check on him, they didn't greet him. And I said, what in the world is this? When it comes to integrity, I had someone who would actually come in and actually stole something out the house.
Wow. Did you have cameras?
Eventually, we did get a camera, but it was something so small, so minute. And I'm wondering, why would someone risk their job for $2, And then just excellence. I had someone come once, I tell you, she looked like she was in her pajamas. How can you give care when you're not putting enough care into your own appearance? And so I wanted to make sure that we were providing that first and foremost. When I'm interviewing potential employees, I ask them, what does compassion mean to you? What does integrity mean to you? Define excellence. What does that mean to you? Because that is so important to me. When you open up the employee handbook, that's the first thing you see as well, an explanation into what those things mean. And so what we provide is that empathy. We know exactly the position that these families are in, and that makes us uniquely qualified to care for their loved one.
Wow, that is so powerful. You're saying so many things that are just resonating with me right now. It's just asking the right questions up front really helps you open the door to the right people as you are sending people to people's homes, right? And having that infrastructure in place to have a handbook, I remember dealing with a home, my own experience. I had a home care. She owned the home care company. The day of that she was supposed to show up to work, text me Monday morning at 8:00 saying, what did she say? I never forgot this. Hold the reins down. Today is my birthday. I can't come in.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Can you imagine, right? And I work full time, so it was like I'm in a tailspin because now it's kind of like now I have to reset my entire day. I've even had someone say to me, well, I'm here for your mom, not for you. I'm like, ma'am, if you're here for my mom, you are here for me, right? You work for me, I'm paying you, right? At the end of the day, I'm authorizing the care that you are giving in order for you to even step into my home. So that level of audacity, so I understand. I'm like, okay.
And so when someone says that to you, the other thing that I stress to the families is that I'm here. I'm here to listen. If nothing else, I'm here to listen to you. I know that you have concerns. I know that you have fears. I'm here to listen. I will talk to families and they will just kind of dump, and that's okay. I let them know.
Because you've been there, right?
I've been there. And so sometimes they don't have an outlet. And if nothing more, I can be a listening ear. And that's important as well.
And I feel like that's why I have such a passion for this program, is because I want people to know that you are seen, you are heard, that there are people out here that are willing to listen, that you're not in this alone, that there are others out there. There's so many others out there that can identify with where you are right now. And while it feels very dark, very lonely, very overwhelming at times, because, I was sharing on another show that I did the other day, the level of clinical knowledge that we have to be aware of as caregivers in order to ensure that care is given at the right level, and advocacy that's needed. That's a whole program by itself, because I want to really help people understand, hey, there's a level of advocacy. You got to ask the right questions. You got to get that second opinion. You got to know meds. I was meticulous, right? I had a whole 3-ring binder with all the meds and all this stuff. And, I was just like, okay, what did you just say? And writing everything down. So it's such a big part of your life, right? That care that you want to give. So walk me through what happens from the moment a family calls you to the moment care actually starts. What does that process look like? What can people expect? Because, letting people into your home can be a scary perspective, because you don't know what to expect. You don't know. These are people you've never met before that you're now opening up your very private and personal space to. So how do you help people navigate through that?
Sure. Well, the first thing we do is go out for a home assessment. So we'll meet with the family, with the client, talk about our services, talk about the client's needs, and really make them feel comfortable with the company and with the services that are needed. After that, and we sign paperwork and do all of that, Then we send out a skilled nurse to go and do a head-to-toe assessment. The nurse is the one who creates the care plan, the service plan for the client. It's individualized, so it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's what is specific for that particular client's needs. And then after that, we send in an aide to go in and do the duties that are outlined in the care plan. What's important to note, because I know, just like any other situation, we don't trust strangers. I get it. I don't trust strangers either. And so I encourage families when I go out for a home assessment, hey, if it makes you feel better, safer, if it gives you peace of mind, get some cameras. Get cameras. There are all kinds of cameras that you can get. There are some that's in your face. There are some that's more conspicuous. You have cameras that screw into a light, like a light bulb. And besides, you want to see what's going on with your loved one, when you're not in the room. So it's okay to get cameras. But also, I like to reassure families to let them know, hey, all of our staff have background checks.
That's important.
We make sure that they have background checks. And I even tell people who are looking for individuals rather than getting an agency in place. I say, hey, you can get an individual and pay them a little less money if you want. You don't always know what you're getting. If you go with a company, if you go with an agency like King Home Care, you are going to be guaranteed that all of our staff have been vetted. Background checks that are on file with the state of Georgia. So that's important. We make sure that our staff have negative TB tests. We make sure that our staff are CPR certified.
Scott.
Something happens in your home and you're not there because you stepped out to run an errand, yes, they can call 911 and they should, but they also should be trained to act right away in that moment if need be. And so I like to give them a level of that assurance that our staff are coming in, they're trained and they know what to do. And so I hope that gives them a little bit security. But our staff, we're just an extension of your team that already exists. We're an extension of the family that comes in. We're an extension of the doctors. We are all a part of one team and we all have one goal to make sure that their loved one is being well taken care of and is safe.
That's awesome. So what's the biggest mistake families make when they wait too long to call a home health care? I mean, how long, because they're trying to decide, okay, when is the right time to bring additional help in? How do you help them navigate that? Because you may have somebody that's still ambulating, they have some level of, whether it's cognition or they can still move around. How do you help them navigate? When do you think they waited too long? Have you had scenarios like that? Or give me an instance where you felt like, oh, you should have called us several months ago, so we should have, because that way they would not have declined as rapidly. Any situations like that?
Well, you don't want to wait until you are in total burnout as a caregiver. Burnout is real.
It's real.
It is very real.
It's very real.
There's a level of frustration, a level of exhaustion, the emotional drainage. It's very real. You don't want to wait until you get to that point, because a caregiver or the aides come and work alongside you. They come and give you relief. So you don't want to wait until you get to that point of frustration. A lot of clients that we see lately have cognitive decline. So they're experiencing dementia, Alzheimer's. And there's levels to that, right? And so there's the early onset to those that are more severe. And in that case, I would say if your loved one is experiencing cognitive decline, you want to start early. Start bringing someone in early. It's important that they have that consistency. And so you want to make sure you have someone that they're going to see on a regular, be able to relate to, and come in before the family member, whether it's the spouse or the child or the niece, whoever it is, before it gets to the point where they can't handle it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times we base our decisions on kind of feeling like we should be able to handle it. And really and truly, we need that assistance, that help, right? And before that burnout, and I can't say that I did that. I definitely, because I was drowning before I got the help. We kind of touched on this briefly earlier. Like you mentioned the process you had to go through kind of to get an appeal done. How do families navigate paying for home health care? What are some of the most, common options, insurance, Medicaid, private pay? What do families not ask about that they should ask about? Because I think that is one of the largest factors why people don't reach out to is how am I gonna pay for this? I'm making ends meet right now. I'm not rolling the dough. What are some options out there that you've seen based on your experience or recommendations that you can have for someone in terms of paying for your services?
That is a real concern. How am I going to pay for this?
Yeah.
There are options out there, and some of those options are shrinking. So it's a very real concern. Private pay obviously is the first and foremost, but who has that sort of money laying around?
Yeah.
Right. Now, if daddy worked a job and he has pension benefits, a lot of families will use their loved ones' pension benefits, things of that nature to cover the costs for their personal care services. For those who may not have money or may be considered low income, Medicaid has waiver programs that cover personal care services. So you have what's called CCSP and SOURCE. They're both acronyms. CCSP stands for Community Care Services Program. SOURCE stands for Service Options Using Resources in a Community Environment. Both of those waiver programs help the elderly and those who are functionally impaired individuals to avoid nursing homes. So these are clients who may be eligible for being in a nursing home, but they want to avoid that and they want to age in place and they want to remain safe in their homes or in their communities. So that is an option. Now, when you ask when to pull the trigger, the thing is, one of the reasons why you don't want to wait too late is because it can take a minute to get approved for programs like that.
A minute being like a whole year.
Well, I had one client who I think it said it took them 6 months.
Yeah, because I was trying to give people more of a gauge of time of how to manage that, because we weren't eligible and you have to kind of redo some research, because I may do a whole program on those particular programs. Because when I tell you I had to research because my parents own property and with Medicaid there are certain restrictions. I need to do a whole program on that.
Absolutely.
Because it was just like, it was eye-opening, right? And we just ended up having to do private pay, but it got extraordinarily expensive, right? It's crazy. So it's kind of like, the retirement option is a great option if they have a retirement. But if they don't have a retirement, then it becomes, you have to find creative ways to actually fund this actual, their care.
And now another option, if your loved one is a veteran, look into the VA benefits. Because the
That's
VA
definitely
has benefits that cover personal care services. Absolutely. So that's another option. Another option, and this is the sort of thing that you look into ahead of time. And the thing is, we all are going to age. Hopefully, if God allows us to live a long time, we're going to age. We're not getting younger, we're getting older. So we have to understand that this time may come. We may need
We got to prepare for it. Yeah.
We have to prepare for it. And so one other option is a long-term managed care plan.
Talk to me about that.
Sure. This is a plan that covers home care services in the day that you may need it. And so it's based on your doctor's recommendation in terms of the number of hours that you need per week. And that's the thing that I was fighting for when I said that my father kept getting denied. He clearly had a need, and it was kind of during that COVID time where they weren't coming out into the homes. But I'm like, if you just came here, you would see his need. But I was fighting with his long-term managed care plan to get 24-hour service. But like I said, it's a plan that brings in, and it's not limited. So some plans are limited. Like if you have Medicare and if you have some private insurance through Medicare, they may limit your hours and say, okay, this is for temporary help. You know, you're recovering from surgery, so we'll give you temporary help in the home while you recover. So a long-term managed care plan, it's long-term. It's just what it says in the name. It's for long-term care. It's important to look into that, especially when someone is younger, before they even need it. You and I should be looking into that.
I know when you say young, I was like, come on. I say, what age is younger? Because, you know, I make the constant joke, you know, this year I'm celebrating the 19th anniversary of my 35th birthday. So when you're in your I call it the full 30s, do we start looking into that?
Listen, I just turned 52 a week ago.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. But seriously, now is the time to start investigating and looking into it. We purchase life insurance, we purchase car insurance, we purchase all of these insurances, but we never think about long-term managed care, what that looks like when we get to the age where we will need care. And so this insurance covers that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely, I may need to do a show on that, because that is something, because I had not even considered long-term managed care. That's a really important facet. Let's talk a little bit about the emotional aspect, the caregiver's heart. You work with families in crisis, and you see the emotionally, how caregivers are navigating being a caregiver. What's the look and the energy, etc., required to be a caregiver, right? Talk to us about how do you help families like that. The other part of it, and I want you to touch on two subjects here: caregiver guilt, right? Sometimes families feel guilty about bringing in another professional because they're like, well, I should be able to do this. But, understanding cognitively that your physical and emotional energies are limited versus actually trying to pull the trigger to actually do that. How do you help them get past all of those emotions? Or what would be your recommendation?
Right. Well, the caregiver goes through a lot emotionally, but I say, imagine what the client is going through emotionally as well. The client has to come to this understanding that, wow, I need help. Someone who may have been independent all of their lives.
That's the hard part.
Very active. Could have been going to the gym 3 times a week, working, driving, enjoying life. One illness, can change all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember my father going through all of these emotional changes. He was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And he went through the chemo treatments and all of that. And whether it was just the perfect storm of illnesses or whether it was a result of the chemo, he also had a nerve condition called CIDP, which affected his nervous system. He basically could not walk anymore.
Wow.
And he needed total care. He needed someone to change his briefs. He needed just total care, someone to help him eat. And I watched him go through all of these emotional changes, this anger. Get away from me. I don't need you. Don't touch me. Well, he did need care, but he just was grappling with the fact that I was just working during my chemo treatments, still going to work every day.
Yeah, that's hard, right?
Yeah. And so caregivers should understand, and this is where the compassion comes in, that if you think it's hard on you, it's doubly hard on your loved one. So the type of guilt that I've seen, the type of guilt that I've had myself, now I'm fast forwarding because I just took care of my mother. She came to live with me in September of last year. And my mother and I were estranged. That's a whole nother topic. I wrote a book about that one. We'll talk about that some other day. But she was here with me for a week. Fell out in Walmart, rushed to the hospital. Days later, she was having open heart surgery.
Jesus.
She came through the open heart surgery fine. And then the doctor wanted to address some other things she had going on, but she needed to get stronger. Well, she wouldn't get out the bed. They wanted to do physical therapy because it got to the point where she was in the bed so long, she couldn't even walk anymore.
Wow.
They wanted to do physical therapy. She was refusing. She was being stubborn. I'm like, no, you got to do this. And she was a feisty one. She would fight with everybody, fight with me, fight with the nurses, fight with the physical therapist. Dare I say, she cussed everybody out. That's just who she was. And 2 months later, she was gone.
Wow.
So I kept saying to myself, man, if I would have just made her, if I would have done this, if I would have done that. And that's where my
shoulda, coulda, woulda is the hardest thing to do. Yeah.
And the thing is, she was in her right mind. She made the decision not to go to physical therapy. She knew the consequences because we explained it to her. The doctors explained it to her. I explained it to her. And still, she decided not to go. So I had to rest in that. And I had to take that guilt off of me and rest in the fact that she made decisions for herself because she was competent. And so I just let people know that, don't take that guilt in. Don't put it on. Don't wear it like a coat. You can't, because that'll just destroy.
It's counterproductive, right? I mean, feeling that way is not going to change the circumstances. It's not going to help fuel your future, right? And I think too often people are carrying unnecessary guilt about what they could have, should have done. Maybe if I'd started the caregiving sooner, or maybe I've done this differently. I mean, we can evaluate things, because hindsight is always 20/20.
Right.
But is it really a reality? Because in the thick of things, I remember getting on a panel that they had invited me to talk about caregiving, and someone talked about decision fatigue. How much that drains you emotionally because you are having to make almost life and death decisions every day. And there
Mm-hmm.
is a mental and emotional fatigue because you're not just navigating your emotions. Because, like, for me, I was very protective of my mom, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure she never felt like she was a burden. So, like, even when I was feeling overwhelmed, I held it all in, right? Until I could get away and be like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
and that too was wearing on. I didn't realize how much of an emotional toll it was taking on me, a physical toll as well, right? So there's
mm-hmm.
so many aspects to it that, so many layers to this that people don't take into
Absolutely.
consideration, right? And
One
so,
other thing that I want I want caregivers to know about the
mhm.
guilt. You shouldn't feel guilty about needing help.
Yes, that's the key right
You
there.
should not, because there was a time when mom was taking care of you,
Hmm.
dad was raising you, but guess what? They needed a village.
Yeah.
Yes, you may have some single parent homes, but there were some two parent homes. And then
Hmm.
there was some, ancillary folks in the mix helping to raise you. There were aunts, there were uncles, there were schools, there were counselors. They weren't doing it alone.
Yeah.
And so if they didn't do it alone to raise you, you don't need to do it alone in their senior years when they need
To
someone
take
to
care of
take care
them.
of them.
Absolutely. Even feeling guilty about taking a break.
Mm-hmm.
I need to walk away for a second. I remember I was like feeling somehow about going on vacation and leaving my
Mm-hmm.
mom. And actually, because even wrestling a little bit with the guilt about that. Last year, I went out of town and I was driving back from Virginia and I got news. They didn't want to tell me. They waited 2 hours and my mom fell.
Mm. Wow.
And, I was like, did y'all call the ambulance? No, she doesn't want to go anywhere without you.
Mm.
And I said, call the ambulance. The ambulance came and checked her out. And she refused to leave with the ambulance. And
Mm.
I got home at midnight
Mm.
and took her to the ER.
Wow.
And so it was just, it's like moments like that where you go, oh.
Mhm. Mhm.
Maybe I
Mhm.
shouldn't have taken a break. While I needed the mental break, right? But, that refresh was needed for me to come back and actually deal with where she was physically and where she was, whatever. Because with me being here would have prevented the fall. You never know, right?
Right.
We don't have a crystal ball that tells us what could have done, what happened. She ended up fracturing a hip, which resulted in a hospitalization. She became bedbound. But, and then, like you said, having someone that was independent. My mom was a cop.
Mm.
So she was, not feisty in a bad way. She was a strong woman.
Right. Um,
But that's where I get my strength from, right? Because
mm.
I am strong. I'm very resilient. Our resiliency is almost baked into who we are. So just really coming to that. So what's one thing you wish every family caregiver knew before they needed you?
One thing every family caregiver knew before they needed me. Well, I would say understand what their insurance benefits are and what it entails.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what your insurance is, they may cover, it's not a guarantee, but they may cover personal care services. So you need to understand that. I was working with clients who had Humana at one time, and Humana covered personal care services. And
Like 5 hours, right?
well, no, they were covering a lot. It just depended on, the need.
Mm-hmm.
But I think starting 2025, they did away with that benefit, which kind of decimated our client list. It was bad. But So things change. So you want to understand what the benefits are that you have, whether you're on Medicaid, Medicare, whether you have private insurance. I want you to understand what those benefits are. In addition to the personal care services, your benefits may also include transportation. So if you need to go back and forth to the doctor, you know, you can get that transportation covered.
Yeah.
Your benefits may even cover over-the-counter items, whether it be vitamins, whether it be your briefs. If you have issues with incontinence care, it can cover gloves that personal care aides need. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yes. My father's benefits covered all of that. All of that.
What in the world?
Aspirin.
I need a refund.
Yes.
See how much money I spent on that stuff?
Absolutely. His benefits
I still got a whole bunch
that.
of stuff here too. That needs to
Oh, yes.
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 Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow.
So you want to understand what the benefits are before you even make the call.
Do you think it covers an at-home Pure Wick? Because I think we paid like
maybe. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. But you know what? The reality is, like, even being in real estate, I tell people we don't know what you can get unless you ask for it, right? And a lot of times people are hesitant about asking because they just didn't know. I wouldn't have never thought to ask if the medical benefits cover things like gloves and wipes or any of the incontinence care material. I paid for chucks, like we bought the disposable chucks.
Yep.
Like I wanted the heavy duty ones, so I bought those at Amazon. I had a regular recurring thing for her bed that I maintained, and maybe insurance would have covered it, but I never asked, so I don't know.
His chucks were covered, I'm telling you.
Wow, that is amazing. That is some key pieces. So if someone's listening right now, they're in the thick of caregiving, exhausted, overwhelmed, wondering if getting help is even possible, what's the first step they need to take?
Make the call.
Make the call. Yeah.
Make the call. Because you never know, like I said, until you ask. Make the call. Call around to see, and you have to ask specifically for personal care services. And there's a difference between, because a lot of people use these two terms interchangeably, home health care and personal. We're called a private home care provider. That's how we're listed with the state. The difference is in a home health agency, when you have the words home and health together, those agencies are able to do everything that we do, but in addition, they can offer OT, PT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, and those are kind of like temporary things. And if you need them, that's great. You make sure you go to a home health agency. But if you don't need those items and you just need someone to come into the home and assist you with those activities of daily living, your bathing, your feeding, dressing, like I said, incontinent care, housekeeping, light housekeeping, making sure the bed linens are clean and changed, making sure the environment around that person is safe, there's no rugs for them to trip over, making sure that they're getting some sort of physical activity, monitoring mobility. Those are all of the things that we do. In addition to skilled nursing, if someone had bed sores, we can have a nurse come in to take care of those wounds.
Wound care,
Wound care, yeah. So there's a lot of things that we could do, but understand first, we'll ask the questions, to get a feel for what the needs are.
That's awesome. I think that's some really, really good information to have. There's so many spin-offs from this conversation that we had today. I think we're out of time, but I do want to say thank you again, Lisa, for just taking the time to sharing some really insightful information and resources. I can't wait for us. We may have a follow-up conversation where we do a deeper dive into some of these items. Listen, at Caring Conversations, we're really here to provide caregivers with resources, insight, next steps, and overall support, and be a voice for you to say the things that other people wish they could say and they're not able to say it. So I want to say thank you again, Lisa, for being on our program today. And I can't wait until next time. I'm Natasha with Caring Conversations. Let's talk again.
Thank you. Take care.